everybody, and welcome to another episode of Connect with KB. So glad to have you tuning in with us this morning as we talk about business, education, leadership, and all the wonderful things that connect us to each other. My guest today has been a friend for over 40 years as we were high school classmates together at Seminole High in Seminole, Florida. Today, we both live in Grand Rapids, and he is the managing partner for Grand Angels and Michigan Capital Network. I couldn't be happier that he's joining me on Connect with KB. I want to welcome to the podcast, Dale Grogan. Dale?
Thank you for having me. Go Warhawks.
Go Warhawks is right.
Who would have said that?
It is so great to have you here. And it's just so ironic that we have ended up in the same town, and you just have an incredible story. I want to hear it. I want to say thank you. Our dear friend, Lori Owens-Fleissner, was in town a couple of weeks ago, and we all got to have dinner together. And it was just a flashback in time. It really was. And you look so much like you did in high school. You haven't changed a bit. Your hair is just a tad bit grayer, but my friend, you look so great, and you are the same person, same lovable personality. And so I want you to share with the listeners the Dale Grogan story.
Oh boy. Sure. I'm not sure how much you want to hear about the Dale Grogan story, but I think the most important thing is I am the product of my path, right, of my journey. And my journey started in Florida many, many years ago with you, Kristen, and brought me to Grand Rapids through a circuitous path. But the most important thing I would argue, and I say this to my wife all the time, I want to be three things. I want to be a good father, I want to be a good husband, I want to be a good host. The rest of the stuff is all supportive of that. So that's what I'm most proud about. That's who I am, right, in one phrase. And it really, to me, it starts with the family, right? I have four just terrific kids, fabulous daughter-in-law, and life is really, really good. So son, daughter, right? We had to try for the daughter, and she is just the apple of my eye, right? So Olivia's now 20. She's a junior in college, and when did that happen, right? And the boys are all out of school, flourishing and becoming young adults. And so the journey has been really such a joy to see them from little kids where you're parenting and you're sort of here telling them what to do. And now they're here and they're sort of telling us what they're going to do. But that part's really, really great. So, and, you know, I have to work to support them, right?
Right.
But that's really sort of, we can get into the work part of it, but that's really the center of my universe.
Well, you know, I had the opportunity to meet your lovely wife, Linda, and you are great partners together. I suspect that life over in Grand Rapids has been really, really good to the two of you. You do have four beautiful children, and they're doing their own thing now. And so it allows you a little bit of time for you to both to enjoy each other. It allows you a little more time in regards to your work. And so I want to talk a little bit about that and the work that you're doing and what it really means to be a venture capitalist and to be so heavily involved in early stage companies and what you do in your day-to-day work.
Gosh, being a venture capitalist is sort of a mysterious phrase, but it really means nothing other than we are investors, and we invest in people and ideas, right? So we hear stories from entrepreneurs that talk about how they want to change the world. And in a lot of cases, they can't or won't. But in some of those rare cases, when you hear these stories that are so compelling, you want to help. And our commodity or our assets or our gifts are our abilities to finance these companies and to bring to bear our experience with them. I mean, we've been doing this for a very, very long time. We've seen a lot of companies. We've seen a lot of growth stories. And if we can help these companies get on the path to success and ultimately create wealth, that's the win, right? So certainly we're capitalists, right? I mean, that's part of the title. But we only win when the companies win, when these entrepreneurs win. And so that's the most important point to focus on. It's not a zero-sum game. It's an and plus game.
Well, you know, you did had you did some work at the Michigan Accelerator Fund. That was through the MEDC, State of Michigan. You've continued this trajectory of people noticing you in the talent that you have. And I say that, and I know you know that this is true. You're very humble because you're not going to acknowledge it, but I know that you know it's true. Tell me some of the examples of the success that you've had in terms of helping people with this investment, and what are some of the criteria that you hold people to? Because people have a lot of good ideas, but how do you kind of hone in on those that you want to support?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think, Kristen, it starts with people, always. Are these people that you can believe in? Are these people that are willing to take the big risks? Are these people that have experience? So when we look at a company, we have to see some sort of common themes. Is this a team that is intelligent? Are they mentally adroit? Are they coachable? Do they have a big idea? Right. This has to be revolutionary, not evolutionary. Right. No one's ever changed the world by making it a little bit better. Right. And so you have to have a big idea. You have to have a market. You have to have some sort of new angle. Right. It has to be proprietary. It has to be protected. So here's an example. During the pandemic, patients with ADHD could not get in to see their providers. And so there's a company in Hudsonville started by a physician and a local entrepreneur that started providing online services. So they curated a network of physicians all over the country so that patients with ADHD could get in digitally, right, through Zooms or virtual meetings to see their providers, and were able to get their medicines and carry about their lives. That's life-changing stuff. And this little company needed help. They needed funding. They needed direction. So when we came in, we heard the story, and one day wrote a term sheet and closed the investment almost immediately, and were able to provide the company with enough capital to fuel their growth. So 16 months later, they're in all 50 states. They've done 26,000 assessments. They have 250 doctors online. And the amount of people that they've helped is just innumerable. That's good stuff. That's what venture capital ought to be doing.
Well, how do you then make a determination? It is risk, because I suspect that some have failed.
Of course. That's the name of the game.
Yeah. How do you, and I suspect that, and I'm hoping that you win more than you lose, but how do you assess that to make a determination that this is a good thing to do?
Again, it goes back to the team, right? And are they compelling? Are they lucid? Do they have a plan, right? So we listened to some pitches just last night, and these were ideas in not necessarily companies. I want to build X because I've seen a need. Okay, great. That's a product. How can you take that product and make it a real business? How do you scale it? How do you get it out to the market? How do you market it to places beyond your local geography? In other words, how do you grow this into a real business? And so that's part of the equation. It's seeing if those entrepreneurs and the whole management team, if they have that vision of making this a company. And then the second part is, if you have a good company, you also have to have a good investment, right? Sometimes there are entrepreneurs that overvalue their company. This is $1 billion idea. It's not, right? I'm going to keep 99% of the company forever. You won't. Mm-hmm. And so you have to have that conversation. You have to have the negotiation. So you have to have a good business and you have to have a good investment. And that's where the journey starts. Then you have to help the company, right? Just like if you sit on the board of directors, you want to bring your network to bear, just like you do, Kristen, every single week. We've met thousands of people over our lives. Let's concentrate those skills and those assets and those capabilities to help these companies grow. That's the sort of inside baseball stuff that you get to do. And then if you're able to do that, you can successfully transition the company so that you're now redistributing wealth. There's a company in Grand Rapids called Grand River Aseptic Manufacturing.
I know those guys.
Do you know Graham?
I sure do.
Oh, they're fantastic.
Yep, right down on Front Street.
Yeah,
you bet. Yep.
It's a great story. So the Van Andel Institute in Grand Valley got together in 2010 and said, we want to start this business. They didn't have a team. They didn't have a plan. They didn't have any money. So we were brought in to help do all that, and brought in the money, brought in the team, and COVID happened, and they happened to be manufacturers of Johnson & Johnson's sterile vaccine, and the company has grown and grown and grown and grown. It will probably sell again next year and distribute hundreds of millions of dollars of wealth back into the Grand Rapids investment community. That's the kind of stuff that you need to do. That's that virtuous cycle where you have an ecosystem, entrepreneurs, and capital. And if you have all those, you've got the makings of a real wealth building, sustainable sort of situation where that's where you want to be. That's why Grand Rapids is so exciting.
So when you talk about that, and you talked a little bit about like the healthcare sector, you've talked a little manufacturing. What other sectors do you work in? Is there a emphasis in most of your work is in a particular sector, or how diverse are you?
Great, Chris. Great question. So our investments inside our funds typically reflect the ecosystem of Michigan. What do we do well? We make stuff. We make stuff, tiny stuff, really well. We're great in life sciences, and we're good at technology. So if you think about those, three sectors. Over the years, we've developed a good network and good experience in those spaces. So as an investor, stick to your knitting. I know nothing about the latest app coming out of California. So I'm the dumb guy. I'm the dumb money in the room. You don't want to be that, right? They always say, if you look around the room, find out who the dumb money is, it's you. If you don't know who it is, it's you. So that's we sort of stick to our knitting, and I have a personal love for the spirits business as well.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that. I see where
Funny you ask.
that you have started to venture into that a little bit. Talk a little bit about, first of all, how did that happen? And then share with the listeners some of the brands or some of the moves that are being made in Michigan and the U.S.
Well, Grand Rapids was proud to take on the moniker of Beer City, USA, right? Because largely in part to our friends at Founders, and put Grand Rapids on the map. But then as the beer market cooled, the spirits market, the craft spirits market has grown just exponentially. And that is a market where I think there are tremendous opportunities. And there is both investment and production. And I'll tell you, the state of Michigan is a sleeping giant when it comes to spirits. There are a number of homegrown spirits here. You think about there's Coppercraft, and you've got Iron Fish, you've got Two James, you've got Valentine. There's really a bunch.
Long
of those.
Road, throw those guys in there too.
Turns out, and then there's tremendous investment that comes in. So with the wealth that was created out of Founders, a couple of guys, principally John Green, has become an investor in the space, and I've known John for years and years. And we invested in a rum brand called Papa's Pilar several years ago, which is owned in large part over in Lansing by a guy called Paul Vlasic and his investment group. And so we saw some opportunities there. And this our most recent foray is an Irish whiskey brand called Natterjack, and I think you may have read about that one, Kristen, where John called me and he said, "Hey, I've seen this whiskey in Ireland. I think it's fantastic, and this guy got put in a box by some bad dudes, and let's see if we can go help him." And that part about the let's help was particularly appealing to me. And so in the course of 8 days, we raised about $4 million. We put together a plan, and we're able to successfully buy this company out of bankruptcy. And so the bad guy didn't get his way, which was really, really cool.
Well, the neat thing about that is that I don't think that John probably thought when he started Founders that this was going to be the path, that the next thing you know, he would be divesting himself from the business and then stepping in and helping others. And I suspect that that's probably what's going to happen with other entrepreneurs too, that they will get to a point where they too will probably sell off and they have the ability and the experience to help somebody else and lift them up as well. How far is it from Natterjack potentially coming to the U.S.?
Natterjack is in 2 markets right now. They're in New York and they're in Texas, and soon to be in Michigan. So go ask for Natterjack everywhere you go.
This holiday season.
That's right. It's the gift that keeps giving.
Yeah, you bet.
Your comment, Chris, I think is really, really important about what do you do post-success, right? And we talk about this all the time. We're fortunate enough to help create wealth for entrepreneurs. So what do you do with it? The worst thing you can do is go buy an island in the Caribbean and disappear off the grid. The best example is reinvesting in community. And one of the best programs that I know of is the Jandernoa Entrepreneur Mentorship Program, started by Mike Jandernoa many, many years ago. Mike's by every measure been a success in everything he's ever done. And his decision was to reinvest into the community by creating partnerships and mentorships with successful business leaders, and then matching them up to young growing business leaders. And so what you're seeing is reinvestment in time and in resources, and we see that with capital as well. So again, it's that virtuous cycle. If you see the ability to reinvest, that's what's going to make our community stand above for years and years.
Yeah, I had dinner with Bob Herr a couple of weeks ago. And
love Bob Herr.
And his daughter, Katie, is a great friend of mine, too. And Bob talked about that program. And, you get to that point in your career where you're not sure who's getting more out of it. Is it the mentor or the mentee? And so a big pat on the back to Mike and to Sue Jandernoa, too, his wife, on the great work that they're doing over in Grand Rapids. What advice would you give to someone who might want to step into Dale Grogan's shoes? I suspect that when you did this, when you started this, I don't think that you probably thought that this is where you were going to be. But for someone who might be listening to this podcast and is interested in maybe having this kind of opportunity, what do they need to do?
I think you have to follow your heart, right? I mean, I was going to be an eye doctor, right? I mean, I went to optometry school for 2.5 years. I was going to give sight to the blind, and woke up one morning and thought, I cannot do this. And so I just sort of thought, what do I want to do? And so I found work in the finance industry, and that was Merrill Lynch in 1987, right? And I was in Birmingham, Alabama, and that sort of took me to another opportunity. And then went down to Florida, met my beautiful wife on an airplane. That's a whole nother story. But it's really do what excites you, right? Don't be afraid to take the big chance, right?
I agree.
Say yes to the big chance. You're only going to get a handful of them in your life. And if you pass them by, it's always going to be woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Right. And they generally end up well. Things are good, and you got to be a risk taker, and you got to be a little bold, but they generally are setting you on the path that you're supposed to be on. So I think that is great advice for young people, that don't be afraid to make a move. And, it generally leads to something else, some other network connection or some eye-opening revelation that you haven't had before. And I think that sometimes you just got to let it be. You got to let the journey just be, and not try and spend too much time overthinking it, but just letting it happen.
Amen. Be thankful for the losses, because those are the lessons, and be appreciative of what you have. So often we see people that are worried about, what does the other guy have? What is he getting? Who cares what the other guy's getting?
Right.
Be appreciative of what you have out of this.
Well, and I was just going to ask you that, and you kind of started to mention it. I always like to ask the greatest lessons that you've learned, and who have been those people who have helped you?
Golly. My wife.
Good answer. Very good answer. Do you guys talk about business?
Constantly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, she is an exceptionally good listener and has unbelievably practical advice. I can spin 9 different stories in 99 different directions, and she can cut through and say, that's a dumb idea. Do it this way. Yeah, that seems... She's sort of my Occam's razor, right? Right. It's usually the easiest to answer.
Yeah, well, you know what? I can see it. And as I said earlier, she is just delightful. I'm so glad that you found each other. Who would have thought that 40 years later, we would be sitting here at Spotlight Studios having this conversation? And I just want you to know how much your friendship has meant to me over the years. everybody should know that this guy in high school was so much fun. He's exactly the same way today. I think that you were probably voted the most likely guy to succeed. It came to fruition. I can tell you that. Anything else about our journey or travels or anything you want to mention about Seminole High and just the trajectory that you've been on?
Gratitude, right? I think that's the most important thing. I'm thankful for the ability to reconnect, right? These are the friends that you make in high school are the formative ones, and I can't say I've kept in touch with all the people in our class, 917 in our senior class.
Right,
so
it was pretty big.
Don't necessarily remember all of them, I have to say, but those friendships that you create as you're becoming your own person are really, really important, and we all grow at the same pace. We do largely the same things. We become parents, we become employees or employers, we become grandparents. And so your comment about picking up where we left off is exactly right. And that's just fantastic. So I'm sure I'm going to see a lot more of you now over the next several years. But in that gap in between, don't feel like we missed.
We didn't.
We didn't miss much.
We didn't. It's exactly the same. It's the same way when Lori came to visit me a couple of weeks ago, too. We were exactly the same way that we were 40 years ago. And we laughed and we reminisced. And I think that that's what life is all about, is lifelong connection. And when there is gaps in between, that you can still come back together and reflect on all of the good. And I've done that. You've done it with Karen Bernard, Bob Miller. I've been doing it with Patty Janak and Marie Krausick, and just people that we went to high school with and who have touched our lives.
Yeah, it's been great.
Well, I am so glad that you came on with me, Dale. Let's do it again. We'll go next year, okay? We'll do it right before Christmas again next year, finishing off the year really strong here on Connect with KB. I want to thank my guest, Dale Grogan, Managing Partner at Michigan Capital Network. I also want to thank my supporting sponsors, Downing Industries, Governmental Consultant Services, AF Group, Public Affairs Associates, and Mercantile Bank. You can listen to all my podcasts at connectwithkb.com. Until we connect again, go live your best life. I'm your host, Kristen Belter.